Hello, I'm Daniel. I want to read to you a little passage from The Method of No Method, and then I will comment on that passage. This passage is called Correct Views in Practice. So here we go. A practitioner should give equal weight to having the correct views and to practicing. The two go hand in hand. If the method is not guided by correct views, the outcome will be different from what the Chan masters taught. Someone holding a non-Buddhist view cannot gain Buddhist enlightenment because whatever view they are guided by is not the Buddhist view. Therefore, the guiding view is very important, perhaps more important than the method. It is already very difficult to practice, but to hold the correct view is even more difficult. When Shakyamuni Buddha outlined the Noble Eightfold Path, he named right view at the very first. When you can accept and hold the correct view, you will have already overcome the obstruction of afflicted views. As a guiding principle, one can just accept the Buddha's words, but a clear understanding is also necessary because one cannot truly accept what one does not understand. This means replacing your own prior views with the correct Buddhist view. When the correct view is actualized in an experience of emptiness, this is called seeing your self-nature, which is the beginning of enlightenment. In that moment of realization, erroneous views are completely dropped and you gain a thorough understanding of the correct Buddhist view. Practice is like sailing a ship to a distant port. You must know the destination and how to sail, but you should also have a map. If the map is incorrect, or the compass setting is wrong, you will end up elsewhere than imagined. Therefore, not only is it important to have a map, it must also be the correct map. Shakyamuni Buddha discovered the path for himself after many years of practice and hardship. After gaining full enlightenment and realization, he shared his experience of this path with others. His main teachings are encompassed in the Four Noble Truths, the Three Marks of Existence, and the Noble Eightfold Path. Having correct views is the first step on the path and the guiding principle for the rest of the path. To have correct views is to be firmly established in the teaching of the Four Noble Truths and the Three Marks of Existence. The Four Noble Truths teach the truth of suffering and how to terminate suffering. As the fourth Noble Truth, the Buddha taught that following the Eightfold Path will lead one to liberation from suffering. The Three Marks of Existence express the correct understanding of suffering, impermanence, and no self. These are all teachings one must understand and accept to have the correct view of Buddha Dharma, the Dharma as taught by the Buddha. So there's a lot here, right? But what we're talking about is the fundamental teachings of Buddhism, which are the foundation for this meditation practice that we call silent illumination. It all is founded on these key concepts. And I don't want to say people shouldn't meditate if they don't have an understanding of these concepts, but I do want to say that different results will come if you're meditating to be better at your job than if you're meditating to be a more full, whole person. If that makes sense. Like some people, there's a new craze going around of people trying meditation practices to be better at business, to be better at sports, to be better at whatever they're doing. And those things are not bad. But what Sheng Yen is telling us in the text is if we have that foundation, if we have that Buddhist foundation as our foundation in this practice, then seeing our true nature becomes more potential, a more possible potential. That is, you can go somewhere without a map, you can go somewhere without GPS, but if you have that map at the beginning, it's going to be easier to get there, right? You could still end up getting there, of course, but having that correct understanding really can be helpful to us a great deal on this path. So, that being said, he runs over these key concepts, and I'm going to talk about them a little bit, and we'll see where that takes us. But first of all, the Buddha was a historical figure, and he had this experience. He had this desire to understand the nature of human life, essentially, the world and our place in it and all these things. And he had this experience that we call enlightenment, and he realized certain things about the world, and especially about our place in the world, that are true, that seem to be fundamentally true. And it starts with the Four Noble Truths. That is, there is suffering in life. The cause of suffering is attachment. There is a way out of suffering. And the way out of suffering is the Eightfold Path, which we'll get to. So, suffering, I'm not crazy about that word, because I think it brings to mind things that are greater than what life often is. Because when I think of suffering, I think of hell. Like you go to a terrible place and people are pulling out your fingernails or whatever. But suffering is the translation we've gotten for a word that is dukkha. And dukkha means, literally, it means a little bit off. A little bit off, like a wheel on a cart. That was the way it was originally described. Like life is like a wheel, a broken wheel on a cart. And we can think about that. I like to think about that as like a shopping cart, where you go to the store to go shopping and the cart has a wheel that's just a little bit messed up. So, you're pushing your cart along getting things or whatever, and once in a while, boom, boom, right? The wheel sticks. And it's really super annoying, and it's affecting your shopping experience. But at the same time, it's usually not bad enough that you put the cart back and get a new one, right? What are you, crazy, right? So life is like that. That is, there are bumps once in a while. And sometimes it seems like all the wheels are broken, right? Or two or three. And sometimes it feels like you don't experience that wheel sticking for a long time, and then it sticks really hard, right? And that is what I like to think about when I think about suffering. And when we talk about attachment, what we're really talking about is, not only trying to hold on to things that are fleeting, because everything's fleeting, trying to wish that things would last forever, because nothing will, but also getting really attached to that idea in our minds of what the world should be like, or what life should be like. Like the "this is never good enough" mindset. The mindset that says, how dare the world do this to me? Why is this happening to me? What we want to learn how to do is cultivate a mindset that instead says, right now it's like this, what can I do? Right now it's like this, what can I do? Instead of, why is this happening to me? Right now it's like this, what can I do? And that's very, very hard to do. We have that tendency to think, why is this happening to me? Always. And it's a real struggle. It's a real struggle. But if we can learn how to cultivate that mindset, we can have a greater well-being in our lives. Greater well-being in our lives. So, that, and then the four Noble Truths, the third one, there is a way out. That is, it doesn't have to be this way. And then the last one is, of course, the way we can rearrange our life so that maybe things are a little better. Maybe things are a little better. And so I guess I'll go through those. He uses the right terminology. He says it starts with right view. Some people like to use the word correct instead, correct view. Some people like to use the word wise. I really like the word wise instead, because right implies right and wrong. But that said, he said right, so I'm going to describe it with that word right, but it could be any of these. It could be correct, right, wise. Any of those would work. So it starts with right view, as he said. Sometimes that's called right understanding, and it's just seeing the world and our place in it clearly. Seeing the world and our place in it clearly. We are weighted down by our baggage and our perceptions and the judgments we put on everything, and we often don't see things clearly, right? And we also don't accept that everything changes and nothing lasts forever, but that's the nature of existence, is that everything changes and nothing lasts forever, okay? And right view is just cultivating an understanding of that and trying to accept that and not so tightly holding on to everything all the time. So, that's right view. The second one is right thinking or right thought, and that just means we are directing our attitude toward living a better life, being a better people. We're directing our thinking toward that instead of just sort of sleepwalking through life or mindlessly indulging in things all the time, but rather we're thinking, okay, how can I be a better person? What can I do to have more awakening in my life? And the third one is right speech. And that is, we want to use words that are helpful and kind. We want to stay away from lying, especially lying for no reason, which we do sometimes, right? But also lying to hurt people. Deception. The different kinds of lying, like leaving things out that people would like to know, right? That's a form of lying. And also things like gossip. I didn't really realize about myself that I like gossip until I reflected on right speech and thought, oh, gossip's not okay. And then I realized, oh, I gossip sometimes. We don't think we do, but we do. And that's where you're just talking about people in ways that are vaguely negative. That is not right speech. And so the fourth one is right action. And that's just do good things. Sometimes it's called refrain from evil and do good. And I'm not crazy about that because, again, evil sounds like a really heavy thing, right? But it's just sort of try to do good things with your life. Try to do good things with your life and try to avoid doing bad things with your life. And the truth is, and I could talk about Buddhist ethics, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to save it for another time. I think we know right and wrong innately. I believe that about human beings. I believe we innately know it's wrong to do things that hurt people. It's good to do things that help people. I think we learned that when we're 5, if we didn't know it even before then. So, I mean, I could go into specifically what Buddhist ethics are, but I'm going to save that for another time because I don't think I need to. I think that right and wrong are often, we know very clearly when we're doing something wrong and we just really want to do it, so we do it. Okay? And then the next one is right livelihood. And this one is the one that is maybe a little bit harder to think about, reflect on in the modern world. And that's just, the Buddha said, your profession should not be something that actively harms people. Should not be something that actively harms people. So he specifically singled out like selling slaves and selling weapons of war. He specifically singled out those things, selling slaves, selling weapons of war, as professions that are not right livelihood. And I think those are pretty clear, right? But it really, what it really means is try to find a way to make sure your career, where you spend a whole lot of your time, is bringing benefit to people, helping people. And that could be very hard to do in a lot of jobs. One of my friends, he worked in IT and he worked for some vaguely shady, very wealthy people. And that was how he made his living. And he said to me, like, how can I really have right livelihood and support my family in this industry? And what I told him was, you go to work every day and you just be really pleasant and be really genuine and make sure everyone you interact with has a good experience. And if you can do that, that's right livelihood too. Because the truth is that bringing a pleasant experience to our coworkers is a great thing too. Some people hear about this right livelihood and they think everybody has to be a teacher or a yoga instructor or a librarian or something, or even a monk living in a monastery. And those things are good, but it's not limited to that. It is just, you want to think about if you're bringing good to the world. And if you're not, think of ways that you can. That is what it's all about. Think of ways that you can bring good to the world through your career. And that's not to say, like, I don't think your career is who you are, but it is somewhere where you spend a lot of your time. And the truth is, can we manifest goodness in an area where we spend a lot of our time? I hope so, right? So next is right effort. And that is just, it's sort of, everything's tied to this, but it's sort of keep at it. keep doing these practices. Don't give up. It's what gets you to keep going, right? So it's very easy to get lazy, and right effort is what keeps us from getting lazy. It's determination. It is, I'm going to meditate every day because I have right effort. It's not because I'm good at meditating. I'm not. And it's not because I want to do it. I don't. But I have cultivating that right effort to keep me motivated and inspired. That's what right effort is. Okay? We're coming up on the last two. So, right? Mindfulness. That is where we are trying to pay attention to the world around us. Trying to pay attention to the world around us. So, we are trying to be present in our experience instead of being distracted and daydreaming all the time. That is what right mindfulness is about. It's about really learning how to be present instead of always mentally being somewhere else. And when we pay attention to our thinking, we realize we are mentally somewhere else almost all the time. Almost all the time. I like to say we live in a daydream, and that's why you hear people say things like, my kid is driving and it seems like they were just born. Well, that's because you're living in a daydream and life's passing you by. And so I like to say we can bring more life to our experience. We can bring more. You can't bring more years to your life maybe, but you can bring more life to your years by learning how to just be present and pay attention. And especially that's meaningful when we show up for the people that we love. And when they're telling us something, we're listening and we're present instead of mentally being somewhere else or waiting for our turn to talk, right? That's mindfulness. And it's also if you've ever been driving somewhere and it's somewhere you've been before and you are suddenly there and you don't really remember the trip, that is mindless driving, and that is pretty dangerous, right? Mindfulness is where we pay attention to what we're doing. And the last one, it's right concentration. Sometimes it's called right contemplation. Sometimes it's called right meditation. All those things are accurate. It's where we have our formal sitting practice. We formally find a place that we like to sit down. We sit in a certain way and we do our practice method. And in the context of this, we're talking about the silent illumination practice method, where we just be present with our experience. But there are other meditation methods that one could do as well. Some people like to mentally recite a mantra. Some people like to follow the breathing. And sometimes I like to do that one. Some people like to do visualization type things where you imagine an image and you just fixate on that. And some people like to stare at fire. All those things are meditation methods. And it's just that we should have a formal practice because that repeated practice is what does something for us. Repeated, regular, formal practice is what does something for us. And that's the last of the steps on the Eightfold Path, right? I like contemplation, right? Contemplation. I think that's the word I'm going to go with, contemplation. But, so, that was the Eightfold Path. And then he did talk about the 3 marks of existence. I'm going to read how he said it, and that's how I'm going to talk about it. So he called it suffering, impermanence, and no self. And the first 2 are what I think of as the easy ones, and then the last one it's a little bit harder. But, so, suffering is an aspect of life. And the world's not all sunshine and rainbows. We can't avoid suffering all the time as much as we really want to, right? And this is important for a few reasons. One reason is if we accept that and we know that about life, then we're not taken by surprise all the time when things go wrong, because that makes it worse, right? And another aspect is if we realize suffering is the nature of life, is an aspect of life that is unavoidable, then we're a little bit nicer to the people around us because we know that it's an aspect of life for them. Even someone that's mean, even someone who we fundamentally disagree with about many, many things. Suffering is the nature of their life. They're going to get sick. They're going to see people they care about die. They're going to get older. They're going to die, right? That is everyone. So maybe we could be nicer to each other, right? Maybe we could be nicer to each other. And then impermanence, I kind of blended those together a little bit, but it's just everything goes. Everything. We try hard to hold on to things, and the truth is, you can't. You can't. Not forever. Not even most things, not even for a long time, right? And that applies not only to possessions like cars and computers, but to our health and well-being, of course. That has become more and more clear to me as I've entered my 40s and I'm getting gray in my beard and things. It's become more and more clear to me, oh, I'm impermanent too, right? Sometimes it seems very clear about the world around us because we see our possessions breaking down, but less clear about ourselves until our bodies start to break down. And then we realize, oh, this is a train that's going a certain way, right? So that's just impermanence, but it also applies to our thoughts and feelings. A lot of the time, if you're angry or upset or depressed, you get in that mindset of thinking you can't imagine it coming to an end. You don't even think about it coming to an end. But if we can reflect, we can realize, oh, well, it will though, right? Your feeling of anger will subside. Your feeling of depression will subside at some point. And of course, that applies to pleasant feelings too, especially like ecstatic joy, right? That's not just going to stick around, right? Right? And then thoughts. We have things we can't stop thinking about, and then until we do, right? And that, of course, that applies to like when you're trying to sleep and you just keep running through something in your head, and you don't realize when it passes because then you're asleep. But of course, it does pass, and so thoughts are fleeting too. And once we do our diligent meditation practice, we come to realize, oh, my mind is crazy. It just goes thought, 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 thought. It just is going all over the place, right? And that's the thing that happens too. And then finally, no self. And this is the hardest thing to talk about. And there will be a whole other talk about this later on, but just from me. But just briefly, it is this idea. We came out of the world. We didn't come into the world. We came out of the world. We are connected to all the things that came together to make us happen, to everything that came together to make you happen, you're connected to, and you're a part of. You're not separate from your environments. You're not separate from your family. You're not separate from the people you interact with. We think of ourselves as these, we sort of mentally put ourselves in a box and think this is happening to me, this is happening to them. But the truth is we're all in this together. And we think we grasp ourself a little bit too hard, and we think that what's happening to me is so important, and how this is making me feel is so important that everybody should stop what they're doing because of how this is making me feel. That idea of selflessness or no self is just sort of realizing that, well, we're part of something. We're part of a connected whole. We're part of humanity. We're part of our family, we're part of this nation, we're part of this world. We're a part of a connected whole. And we don't usually think of ourselves this way, but we can. We can learn how to think of ourselves that way. And that is sort of what the Buddha realized when he realized these fundamental truths. He realized, oh, it's all connected. It's all connected. If we come from a place of realizing it's all connected, maybe we can be a little better off in the world. Maybe we can. So that's all for today. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me, and have a good day.